Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Everybody, it's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building.
Yes, indeed.
TD Jakes.
Bishop the Drip Jakes.
Oh,
I'm gonna tell you something, Bishop. There's nobody I would rather talk. There's nobody I want to talk to this morning other than you.
Thank you.
Like hearts are heavy. You know why?
Yeah.
The tragic accident that happened to Mr. Kobe Bryant, his daughter, and all the other folks on the plane.
Helicopter.
How do you make the helicopter? How do you make sense of that? Like, how could that have been God's plan?
You don't make sense of it. You endure it. You survive it. You grieve. You go through the process. I think where we get in trouble is when we try to explain and understand things that are unexplainable. Right now, we got to survive it because our whole nation has taken a blow. The family in particular, sports fans, other athletes are grieving right now. And I think that to try to explain something like more than you know, we don't know. They're still investigating what happened, whether it's human error or whether it was the weather or the climate. All of those play a factor in it. We look for somebody to blame. How could God allow that to happen, or this or that or the other? But right now, things happen, tragic things happen in life every day, but this is a person that we knew and loved and a part of our community. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to grieve. It's okay to go through those range of emotions, anger and being upset and what have you. But at the end of the day, we're in a survival mode right now.
Now, what do you tell somebody who's on the fence with religion and believing, and they see something like this and they say, wow, he had a 13-year-old that died and there was other, tweens on that plane that died. What do you tell that person for faith and how they can continue to believe?
I think it is your faith that gets you through those unexplainable moments. And I think you have to realize as terrible and as tragic as it was, we're grateful his wife wasn't on board. We're grateful the whole family wasn't on board. We're grateful for that. I look for things that are positive in the midst of the pain, not denying the pain, but I look for things that are positive. As for trying to get somebody to believe who doesn't believe, you really can't do that because God can't be explained. He must be revealed. And you have to have an open heart to allow that to happen in your life.
Yeah, and if you believe God does everything for a reason, you can't only believe that when the positive things happen, right?
Absolutely. Because many times the positive things come out of the most horrific things in our lives. I mean, you look at your own life, sometimes the worst tragedies brought you into an awareness or sensibility over years that if this hadn't happened, that hadn't happened. Time will judge the validity of the situation. Right now, we have to endure.
And you still have to lift up the family members of who have lost somebody right now, and the daughters and his wife and all the family members of the other people who are on the helicopter too. So.
And they lost somebody completely different from who we know.
Right.
When you're famous, people know you from what you do, but your family knows you from who you are, and it's a much deeper loss. It's a greater kind of pain, and it's very difficult to get through.
I listened to a sermon you gave on September 22nd, titled "Keep It Moving." And it almost seems like keeping it moving after death seems insensitive. So how do you keep it moving?
You have to keep it moving because life keeps moving, because bills keep moving, because illnesses keep moving, threats keep moving, problems don't stop because you're in pain. And so sometimes the therapy is in keeping it moving. But of course, when you're the family, you have to shut down for a minute and breathe and recalibrate. And it may be over the next 2 years or 20 years that you feel that pain. My mother died in 99, and if I think about it hard now, I'll get emotional.
Wow.
I mean, because, and I don't even want that to go away. I don't even want that to go away because sometimes the sadness validates the value of what you lost.
Explain that a little more. The sadness?
The sadness, the greater the sadness, it's an indication that the greater the love. Some people don't feel sadness because they don't feel love. If you're a great lover, you have great pain when people leave your life. And that some of that sticks around in your life just to say you were important to me. I don't want to get to the point that I don't feel it anymore. I miss her, and we miss Kobe. We miss whoever we love. We miss them. And to the degree that we miss them, we feel that pain, and that pain in many ways is a tribute to the significance of that individual in your life.
Are there times that you question your own faith, and is that a common thing for people to do, to just question
I used to answer that question and say no, and then I went through something and said, and I have to say yes. I have gone through those moments where I was in grief, in particular, and wondered, why did you allow this to happen? I was a little bit angry with God. I healed. I got over it. I was okay, but I have had those moments of challenge. We have to remember that faith does not mean the absence of doubt. Faith and doubt cohabitate in the same space. And to be completely honest about it, faith is something we believe, but what we like to do is know. And you cannot know, you have to believe. That's the whole premise of being a believer, is to believe that which you cannot see. And you have to do that in the presence of voices of doubt who are telling you it's not worth it. It's just like going to work. Sometimes you don't want to go, but there's another voice says you got to go, and you're conflicted, and yet you keep it moving. And I think a lot of times people are trying to get out of the conflict. But the conflict is a part of life, and we're all conflicted from time to time, and yet we find a way to keep it moving.
That's right. There was a time you said you thought about leaving the ministry.
Yes, I've been there. I've absolutely been there. I went through, when I first got in, especially national, international ministry, all the things that come along with that are hard to manage.
Like what?
Notoriety, interviews, bloggers,
nasty reports.
Mine was the Washington Post article, and I wasn't used to that. And I come from West Virginia. I'm a country boy, and I thought I didn't sign up for this. I don't need that. But the reality is, this one woman came into a book signing and changed my life. When she didn't come into a book signing, she came after a service I was doing. She had just gotten out of the hospital. She'd had a tubal pregnancy, and the baby was dead, and she was living with a dead body inside of her. So it almost killed her. She was very weak. She got out of the hospital against the doctor's request and came to me as if she knew what I was thinking and said, "It's for us that you do it. It's not for them. It's for us." And when you go through moments of challenge and pain, you have to find purpose. And sometimes you forget why you do what you do and why you must endure what you endure. And she moved me like in a major way. If it wasn't for that woman coming that day and talking to me, I don't know that I would have been in ministry now.
Wow.
Well, do the righteous always have to suffer, Bishop?
Everybody suffers. Everybody suffers. The emblem of Christianity is a cross. That's a big warning that if God spared not his son, he's not going to spare you. Everybody goes through suffering, not just the righteous, the ungodly. Everybody does. It's one thing we all have in common. No matter how rich you are, no matter how poor you are, no matter how famous you are, no matter whether you're homeless or living in a mansion, we were all born and we are all going to die. That's the one thing and that's a great common denominator that stops you from arrogance and recognizes the humanity and the brotherhood of mankind. It's that our time is just for a moment.
Yeah, death does not discriminate at all.
It does not discriminate.
Would you want to know? Because we was talking about that this morning. I was saying that yesterday morning. It was it's the unexpectedness of death. I think that shakes us up. Would you want to know?
No, I wouldn't want to know. No, I wouldn't want to know. Some people feel differently about it, but I wouldn't want to know. I want it to surprise me. I don't want to live waiting on a date to leave. I want to live every day to the fullest, not with a cloud hanging over my head about a date that could be 20 years off or 30 years off, and then to adjust my life to dying. I'd rather build my life around living and let death find me whenever it does.
I agree. Now, what are your feelings towards suicide? Because you hear so many different things with suicide. If you're suicide, you'll never make it to heaven. If you're suicide, God will look at you. What are your thoughts on suicide? Because so many kids are...
The first thing that popped into my mind when you said that, it's not whether you go to heaven or not. I think we should work harder to stop suicide. I think that suicide is epidemic, particularly amongst African-American young people, in a way that's reprehensible. One of the reasons that I started the foundation that we're going to talk about is because of mental health. And mental health is a huge issue in our community. And I think you have to understand that a lot of people who take their life, they really didn't take their life. The sickness did. So the person who we say committed suicide is as much a victim as if they were a victim of a homicide. Because if you have emotional mental health issues, it affects your decisions and your judgment and your view of life. So to judge that, who am I? I'm not God. So where they spend eternity, I'm not God. But I do think that the person is a victim, and I would think that if you're a victim, we just believe that they're in a better place.
You're one of the first, people of the cloth that actually embraced, therapy and, telling people to go out there and, get help for their mental health. Because a lot of times we tell our people, take it to the church.
Just pray about it.
Away.
Just pray about it.
Yeah.
And we don't treat it like it's a sickness. We treat it like it's a spiritual issue and it's a health issue. And I think you have to differentiate one from another. Sure, you're going to pray, but you also do everything you can do to be at the best that you can be. And I do think that prayer is therapeutic, but it is not enough for a lot of people who have serious trauma that they've endured, and they need to be able to talk. They need to be able to heal, and sometimes they have chemical imbalances that causes them to be where they are.
I got a T-shirt that says I go to therapy and I pray.
Absolutely. Do it all.
Absolutely.
I take blood pressure medicine and pray over it every day. pray it works. And let it work, Jesus.
You got the T.D. Jakes Foundation.
Yeah, I started the T.D. Jakes Foundation because at this stage in my life, I'm starting to recognize that whoever succeeds me in leadership of the Potter's House may not care about the causes I care about. And I want the legacy piece, the causes, to continue. I'm concerned that we're looking at 23% of African Americans are living beneath the poverty line as opposed to 13% of Americans. We want to bring that number down. How do we bring that number down? When I look at the fact that we have 700,000 available jobs in technology, good paying jobs right now, right, looking for people today, and there are some people who can take those jobs, especially in the African American community and amongst women, because minorities, Latinos, blacks, and women are underrepresented in technology. Technology is where the world is going. And we have some people, but I want to be a facilitator that connects those qualified people with those job opportunities. And not only that, I want to raise up another generation of people who are getting ready for the future. When you look at the plight of African Americans in this country, there are a lot of people who are fighting to keep the rights that we had from the past, and they're very important. But while we fight to keep those rights and gain rights that we should already have, we also have to be thinking about the future.
Yes.
And the projection is that the 8% rate of unemployment amongst African Americans will escalate over the next 10 years to 20%. Not because of racism, but because of technology. And us not being inclined toward technology, the jobs that we have today may not be there tomorrow. And because I sit with CEOs and work with executives, I'm trying to get CEOs to come together and work with community leaders and faith leaders, because I'm starting to realize, and elected officials, because not any one of us is going to be able to lift this, but if we coordinate a strategy for the future, all of us together can lift it up from a four-pronged approach.
You also have a mobile app too, right?
Yes. I do mobile apps. I've got a site that we're launching for the T.D. Jakes Foundation that people can go on the site and get initial information. We're getting ready to put up an app that's focused on, I've got an app out there for our conferences, but the foundation is a different entity from the normal apps that people have for me. It's a standalone entity because I want to collaborate. There are some CEOs out there who really do get it, and they want to do good while they are doing well. And in the process of doing that, I want to hook them up, because sometimes when they have opportunities, the people who need those opportunities don't hear about those opportunities. I can't have millions and millions of people following me on my social media base and not use that leverage to kind of make a connection between those two worlds. And I want to be able to reduplicate my Texas Offenders Reentry Initiative across the country. And I need to set up a foundation so that that work continues, whether I'm sitting at the helm of the Potter's House or not.
How would the T.D. Jakes Foundation get people into those fields, though, like those career fields? Like,
there's a lot of things we can do. We can coordinate events that we have the events that we have, but we can add a job component to those events so that people, when they come to the conferences, can have access to employers who are looking for candidates, so we can help to facilitate that union. Think of it almost like a wedding. We can help perform that wedding between services and needs. We can create awareness in our community, because generally by the time we find out it's over, We can create awareness in our community. You can do that from your platform. I can do that from my platform. We can reach different demographics. I look for partnerships like this because my audience and your audience, so there is some spillover between the two. You can touch some people I wouldn't touch. I can touch some people that you wouldn't touch. But we have to coordinate a strategy that is inclusive of all of the demographics of African Americans, brown people, and women to make sure that they're equally paid, equally prepared, and equally represented in the workforce.
Yeah, they have Black Girls Code. I love that program for young girls, young Black girls to learn about coding early on.
Yes. Well, but, the reason I did STEM to STEAM is because the latest stats suggest that the easiest way to get African Americans involved in coding is through the arts, through production, through film development, through coding so that they can program for LED screens and that sort of thing. And almost every young person I know wants to be a producer of some sort. Let's take that and translate it into how you can also end up working for Goldman Sachs. You can also end up working for Bank of America. You can also end up working for OSHA or some technology, because an algorithm is an algorithm, and kind of bridge the gap and demystify what often our people are afraid to go into.
You sound like you're running for president, man.
No, that I'm not going to do.
You got plans.
I've seen you interview some candidates. By the way, you do a really good job.
Thank you, sir.
I watch you all the time, so it's really, really interesting to bring the knowledge to the next generation, because what I'm fighting for, I'm going to be fine either way. I'm 62 years old. I'll be okay. The issue is my children, my grandchildren, their generation, to do something that is futuristic and that is progressive, because technology is moving us so fast that the future may be closer than we thought it was.
Man, these kids today know so much more about using technology than I have to ask my goddaughter, how do I do this, or how do I use this app? But it's interesting because they should learn how to create those apps that they're using all the time.
There you
and
go.
Get some ownership, because they can start learning how to do that. And I think they're so interested in all these different things that they can do online and do on their phone. If they can be as interested in learning how to create those things for themselves, that is definitely a great way to bridge a gap, because the things they know how to do, I look like, can you show me how?
Yeah. It's a difference between watching movies and making movies.
Right.
Right.
We're always on the consumer end rather than the producing end. And so when it comes to technology, we use the apps really well, but we need to be able to design the apps, to make the apps, to develop the kinds of technology.
And to own the apps.
And to own the apps. Hallelujah.
And invest in other people too, because, even if you're at a point where that's not what you want to do, you can learn how to invest in different technologies so that you can actually profit off of that too.
Investing is a word that we have not taught our children. And from the earliest ages, from 6, 7 years old on up, that's a cultural change in our mentality about money. We think money is to be spent. We generally spend it on depreciating assets as opposed to appreciating assets. We want to look successful rather than be successful. And there's a mentality change that has to get out into our community where we think differently about what success really is.
You announced plans to launch your own online Jake's Divinity School. Did that have the school launched yet?
Yeah, it has launched.
Okay.
Yeah, it has launched. It's up and running. Everything that I'm doing now is about training the next generation. It's empowering them to accomplish their dreams, to reach their goals. I'm leveraging my relationships in academics, and I'm leveraging my relationships with corporate America to create a pipeline, because a lot of us, the only pipeline we have to the world we want to be is the one we see on TV. But you'll never watch TV long enough to get there. So we have to stop watching our dreams and start creating a pathway where we can facilitate our dreams.
Are we seeing more and more young people coming to church now? Are we seeing that more, or is it slowing down a little bit?
That's a great question. I think it varies from church to church and from region to region, from territory to territory. I see a lot of young people who are really interested in faith. Many of them are coming to church. My demos are swinging younger and younger. 50% of my church is millennials. So I'm seeing a huge interest in young people coming to church. But I also am seeing a deterioration of attendance, because a lot of young people...
We online.
Yeah, they're online. You're online. online.
Bedside
Yeah. And you want to watch when you want to
Yes.
watch it. So we stream 24 hours a day. We stream all week long because young people stay up at night and often sleep late in the morning.
Nothing like doing your laundry, watching Bishop T.D. Jakes.
See what I'm saying? Or working out in the gym. Yeah.
That's what I do. I mean, I ride in the morning. I put one of your sermons on, whether it's from YouTube or whether it's the podcast. That's how I consume it. But
And you
I've
can
been
share
to
it with your
Potter House as
friends.
well.
Yes, you have.
There's nothing like being at Potter House.
It's different. It is different being there from watching it on TV. You can get a perception on TV, but I think when I was here before, I talked about the difference between a picture and an ultrasound. When you actually go in it, you see it from a whole different perspective than when you're a voyeur on the outside.
It feels like a college basketball game. I'm saying, like, it had that kind of energy. Like, it feels
it's
like
powerful.
a college basketball
Do you
game.
feel any impact from Kanye doing what he's been doing with his Sunday services?
You know something? I'm thrilled. Anybody who's out there who's doing something positive to help change the world, I'm thrilled about it. I just hope that while he's busy doing that somebody's taking care of him, even if it's just him taking care of him. Because the problem with being talented and being gifted and being good intention is sometimes people are so excited about your gift that they take your gift and leave you behind. And I think it's very, very important for him in order to remain stable and remain functional that he's not so busy giving to us that nobody's giving to him. But I've seen the music. The music is hot. I've seen his performances. I think it's absolutely wonderful. But I want somebody, there's a scripture in the Bible says, no man cared for my soul. I want us to care for his soul as much as we care for his music.
Would you host him? Would Potter's House host him?
I would do any kind of event that I think I would definitely consider doing something like that. My focus, however, is everybody's hosting him. Who's pastoring him?
Yeah.
You understand what I'm
absolutely.
saying? And sometimes I don't want to be seen as a gig. I don't want to be seen as an opportunity. I want to be a voice, an ear sometimes for people who don't have anybody to talk to. I know what it is to be in the spotlight and not have anybody to talk to. So I don't want to be in the crowd that's reaching after him trying to snatch his gift. I want to be the guy who's sitting over in the corner saying, hey, are you okay? How are you balanced? How are you emotionally? How are you mentally? Because we are seeing too many of our artists drift away, be killed, commit suicide, finding them dead in the bathtub. They were great at what they did, but nobody cared about who they were.
Nobody was investing into their mental wealth.
Right.
Yeah.
And you need somebody around you who doesn't just want you for what you do. To say, are you okay? You know, not can you come to me today? Can you sing for me today? Can you speak for me today? You need somebody to say, hey, man, are you doing anything? You look tired. You need some rest, or you said something crazy on stage. Are you okay? There are so many of our talented people. Think of the culture shock it is to go from being in the hood one moment to being a celebrity the next moment with no training, no preparation, no therapy, and all of a sudden you step into this world and you can't get out. Once you get in, you can't get out. Once you're famous, you can never be anonymous. You can be infamous, but you can never be anonymous again. So your success can become your prison. And so if you're going to realize that and you're going to recognize that, we have to, in our community, have to be slow to join the bandwagon of stoning people who got into trouble. We have to be more on the side of the ambulance who rushes to the scene of the crime to see what we can do, because we are hurting too. We know that you are hurting, and we know how to speak the kind of language to get you back up on the
we like to reduce people to their mistakes a lot of times.
Absolutely. While we make our own. While we make our own. Come on, let's be real. And so we're all trying to figure out life, and the moment you figure it out, it changes. You go through stages at different ages, and different ages bring on different challenges, and nobody gets it right at every turn, because every turn is a new experience, and you're back to one again, and you're learning again. And as soon as you get used to having little kids, they're not little kids. As soon as you get used to having teenagers, they've left the house. And everything keeps changing on us all the time. So you never get to be a master at your life, because the courses keep changing.
I was going to ask,
that's a bar.
When young people come to church, what are they looking for? When my grandmother went to church, she wanted hope. She wanted to make sure that her family was okay and she had an opportunity. So what are people coming to church for now? Because it's different now. My kids are online. They look for certain things. They have more questions. It requires more answers. So what are people looking for now when they come to church?
You know, I think it varies from person to person. I think hope has a factor degree in it. Like we're bleeding right now. We're talking about Kobe right now. It reminds us of how the brevity of life. It reminds us that we don't take time for ourselves. It reminds us that there is a life after this life. And so people start to think about faith differently. But I also think that people come to the black church differently than they do for other people who come to church. They look for our leaders to be involved in the community in some way. They look for our levels of quantifiable results. How does this help me right now in the here and now, not the sweet by and by?
Inspiration.
Inspiration. For me, a lot of it is inspiration. A lot of it is exposure. I think what I really long to do is to bring people who normally couldn't get in the room into a room to hear people that they couldn't hear think. And because what we need is models and mentors that take us to the next dimension. And there's one other thing I want to bring up that causes people to come to church. If you come to church consistently, church becomes a family. And for many of us, that's something we didn't have.
That's right.
To be in a family, have a sense of belonging, to see male role models when we don't have fathers. I learned sometimes it's not so much about pastoring our young men; it's about fathering them. It's about challenging them. So you have to be a bit ambidextrous, and you have to develop the kinds of programs that are big enough to respond to a diverse group of people who come to church for different reasons.
Are black churches doing it, though? Are they doing what they're supposed to do for our community?
They're not monolithic. There are some that are on the front
Right.
lines with civil rights, and they're out there doing that sort of thing. There are other churches like me that are using their influence to do the Texas Offenders Reentry Initiative. 23,000 people have gone through that program. I've set up this foundation to leverage who I am as a faith leader against CEOs and corporations and hold them accountable to say that if you're going to take from our community, you have to give back to our community. We're quick to criticize the church taking from our community, but they're not taking from our community like the liquor stores are, like the quick
chicken
cash
spot.
space, the chicken spots. There are a lot of people who eat off of our community. What we need to do, though, all churches are not doing it. Let me get back because I want to be sure I answer your question. All churches are not doing it. Some of it is ignorance. Some of it is narcissism. You see, you don't have to meet any particular criteria to be a religious leader. You can go online and get a license and get a building and become a pastor by tomorrow morning.
Which is scary.
It is very scary because that happens all the time. And so when you talk about the church, it's not like it's one organized group with the leader who has control. And we use these terms like, this is my spiritual daughter, my spiritual son. Until they get mad at you, they are. So the moment I chasten you, you go somewhere else. So there is no one authority. We're not like the Catholic Church where we have a pope and we have a way of disciplining and responding to things and do or do not do that effectively. The black church is not monolithic, very much entrepreneurial in the sense that each body is often autonomous, with no governing power over them. And so it's not one size fits all when it comes to speaking for what the church does.
I got a few more questions. How long can you go without sipping water? Because even when I watch your sermons, I don't ever see you sipping water. Like, how long can you talk without
I
sipping
have
water?
never been asked that question, incidentally. I don't know. I can go a pretty good while. I don't think to go for the water.
Yeah.
When I get to speaking or teaching, the only thing I'm thinking about is what I'm doing. I mean, literally, I lose sight of everything. If it's preaching, it's the text. If it's an interview, it's giving you the best possible answer I can without being prepped for your question. So I don't know exactly what you're going to ask me, and I have to be ready to respond and hope that I give you the best answer. Every time you do an interview, you walk out the room and think, I should have said that. You know, I should have said this. But you have to answer. You've got you ask me a question, I've got a half a minute to think and respond off the top of my head, and I have to be quick with that, and I'll try to give you an answer that I don't mind listening at on the radio when I'm driving down the road.
Since you brought up the Catholic Church, we had this discussion the other day about when you go in the confessional, right? If they have a responsibility when, say, someone commits a crime and they go and confess that. Now, if someone comes to you and they've done something illegal and they tell you that, is that something that you feel a responsibility to report to the authorities, or is that something that becomes this was a confidential conversation?
Well, you have the same kind of privilege that an attorney does when somebody comes and discloses something to you, and that's important because nobody's going to come talk to you about something if they feel like they're going to get reported. There are some exceptions to that, however. When it comes to child abuse,
yes,
you are legally required that if you know it, you absolutely have to report it. There are other issues that are kind of on the borderline where you have to use your best judgment, but it has to be serious for you to violate the confidentiality.
Like murder. Like if I said if I came to you and said I'm gonna shoot Charlamagne tomorrow.
That's serious. And the very
God
fact
wouldn't like that, sir.
God wouldn't like that. The very fact that it is, and I'm going to. I have an obligation
to prevent that.
To prevent that from
But
happening.
if it was already done,
then that's and how long ago was it done, and what can be accomplished by exposing that is a judgment call.
have you ever had to do that?
I've done everything.
Wow.
Yeah, I've done. In 43 years of ministry, I've heard just about everything you can imagine, and I've done just about everything. And sometimes I have claimed my privilege as a clergyman not to testify in a trial. And that privilege is only held up in court if it is just you and me in the room. If one other person is in the room, or if somebody else was on the phone, it violates. I then lose that privilege and that ability not to speak about the issue.
Wow.
I heard you on Oprah Super Soul Conversations, your latest one, to transform your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you spoke about how to use transformational thinking and moving beyond your limiting beliefs. What does that look like to you?
You know, everything is about a change of mind. If I change your economic status, but I don't change your mentality, your status will fall back down to your mindset. If I change your dwelling place, I can put you in a mansion, but if you still have a ghetto mentality, you're going to end up tearing up the mansion I put you in. Every change, weight loss, health changes, whatever it is, starts in the way you think. And until you begin to deal with the story you tell yourself and are willing to challenge your own truth and say, this is what I told myself happened. Let me go back and see what really happened. You can't really help a person to move forward when they hold to their old story.
Well, what about when you're not ready for that transformation? Because I was thinking this morning, how can transformational thinking help you in matters of grief? Because when you look at a situation like, the Bryant family, her whole life has been transformed, so she has to change the way she thinks moving forward, but she didn't ask for that.
No, you didn't ask for it, and you don't want it. Nobody wants that sort of thing to happen, and it takes time. You don't change your mind overnight about anything. Whether any kind of thing that happens in your life, whether it's a tragedy or whether it's a decision to go back to school or whether you're trying to break into a new arena of friends and you become an immigrant while you're still in America, but you become an immigrant into what's next into your life, there's a feeling of misplacement anytime there's a change, a big change in your life, and give yourself time to adapt to that change and accept that change and then figure out, who am I now without Kobe in my life? Who am I now without this job? Who am I now? And begin to become comfortable with that new you. You can have a new year all you want to, but until you have a new you, having a new year doesn't matter.
I wanted to tell you, too, I finally got the worthy, man.
Really?
I finally got the worthy.
Wow.
It hit me over the holidays. Like, I honestly just felt worthy of existing. Mm-hmm. It just really did.
Yeah, I remember that conversation we had. Getting to worthy is difficult when you have been abused or traumatized or belittled, degraded, or have some issues in your past where and if you don't get to worthy, you self-sabotage. You can self-sabotage opportunities because you say you want them, but then you sabotage them because you really don't feel worthy of them. And that can be relationships. It can be jobs. You don't feel worthy of being loved. The worst thing, the hardest thing in the world is to love somebody who doesn't love themselves. Because they will reject your love. They'll cancel it out every time because they don't feel worthy of being loved. I don't believe that you can love me because I don't love me, so how could you love me? And that happens more times than not in relationships, in life and in business. And when I challenge you to get to worthy, it is getting to the place that you accept the good things that God has done in your life and settle in as them being your reality rather than living the trauma of where you came from.
Absolutely.
Well, we appreciate you for joining us this morning.
Yeah, and he's got the International Leadership Summit in Charlotte, April 30th to May 2nd.
Yeah, and I'm going to invite you right on the air
I'm
to
pulling
come
up.
down. I would really?
Man, I'm pulling up. I already had plans to go.
You'll make me cry on your show. I'm serious.
pulling up.
If you would come, that would mean everything to me because this is the most amazing event I'm bringing together. I've got Denzel Washington coming. I've got Tyler Perry coming. I've got Dave Stewart coming. Dave Stewart is one of 13 black billionaires in the world, and he's also a believer, and he's going to be coming. We're going to be having Christian speakers, pastors that are going to be speaking. We've got women who are CEOs and executives that are going to be mentoring young women at the Leadership Conference. It's going to be in Charlotte, April 28th through the 31st, and it's just a conglomerate of a lot of different things because I don't want to just be inspirational and not transformational. Because if I keep inspiring you and it doesn't happen, then you get tired of hearing that. It's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. Next Sunday, it's going to be all right. And it never gets all right. So I want to put the elements in the room that causes the it's going to be all right to happen in your life. People who pull themselves up, people who fought back, people who won. When you know better, you do better, and that's why I'm having the leadership conference.
What day is the mental health panel? I'm putting myself on it.
Come right on.
Okay.
I got to see what day, because you know so many people heard you and I talk about when you did your book and the power of your book and the power of your story. It helped a lot of other people to begin to be able to talk. Your opening your mouth to speak about your life and about your childhood became a model for many other black men who don't talk enough. So I take you very seriously in that spot. I admire you very greatly for what you're doing and having the boldness to speak about that. And I look forward to doing a lot of things with you that I think is very important.
My brother. Respect
All
is
right.
mutual.
It's Bishop T.D. Jakes. Thank you for joining us again.
It's been a real pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.